The dust swirled around her battered sedan, a fine red haze clinging to the desert air. General Evelyn Reed squinted through the windshield, a faint smile playing on her lips. Fort Jericho. The name itself sounded like a relic, a fortress against forgotten wars. For her, it was a new beginning, a challenge, a place where she could finally implement the reforms she had championed for years. Her appointment as the commanding officer of Fort Jericho had been met with a mixture of surprise and skepticism at the Pentagon. A woman in charge of a major combat training installation, one known for its entrenched traditions and a rather robust male culture. Evelyn knew the whispers. She had heard them her entire career, but she had also seen the results of her leadership. She did not need validation from those who clung to outdated notions. She checked her watch. 0700, right on time. She had deliberately chosen to arrive in an unmarked vehicle, a civilian car. New motorcade, new fanfare. She wanted to observe, to see the fort as it truly was before the polished veneer of official visits was applied. She wanted to understand its pulse, its rhythm, its true character. The main gate loomed ahead, a formidable barrier of steel and barbed wire. Two military police officers stood guard their uniforms, crisp their stances alert. As she approached one of them, a young man with a serious face stepped forward, raising a hand. "Halt, vehicle," he commanded, his voice firm. Evelyn slowly brought the sedan to a stop. She rolled down the window. The desert heat immediately invaded the cool interior of her car. "Good morning, officer," she said, her voice calm and even. The MP peered inside his eyes, scanning her face, then the interior of the car. He did not recognize her. Of course he would not. Her official photograph was usually in dress uniform, stiff and formal. Today she wore simple civilian clothes, a plain shirt and trousers. Her rank insignia was nowhere to be seen. "State your business at Fort Jericho," he asked, his tone unwavering. Evelyn considered her answer. She could simply state her name and rank. The gate would swing open. Salutes would be rendered, but that was not her plan. She wanted to see how they handled the unexpected, how they reacted to someone who did not fit the usual mold. "I am here to report for duty," she replied. The MP frowned. "Report for duty? Ma'am, this is a military installation. Are you military personnel?" "Yes, I am," Evelyn confirmed. The second MP, a woman with sharp, observant eyes, approached the car. She looked at Evelyn with a hint of suspicion. "Your ID, please, ma'am." Evelyn reached into her bag and produced a standard military ID card. It was her old one, her previous rank, colonel. She had deliberately kept it. Another test. The male MP took the card. He glanced at it, then back at her. His brow furrowed further. "Colonel Reed, Evelyn. This ID is from Fort Bragg, and it looks a bit old, ma'am." "It is still valid," Evelyn stated. "I have just been reassigned." "Reassigned? Where, Colonel?" the female MP asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. "To Fort Jericho. We have no record of a Colonel Reed being transferred here, especially not a female colonel." Evelyn felt a flicker of amusement. The old guard was strong here. "My orders are classified for now. I am here to meet with the commanding officer." The male MP chuckled. It was a short, dismissive sound. "The commanding officer is General Peterson. He does not take unscheduled meetings, especially not with colonels who just show up at the gate without proper notification." "I assure you, he is expecting me," Evelyn said, her voice still calm, but with an underlying steel that was almost imperceptible. The female MP exchanged a look with her partner. "Ma'am, we are going to have to ask you to step out of the vehicle. We need to verify your identity and your purpose here." Evelyn nodded. This was exactly what she wanted. To see their protocols, their adherence to procedure, their level of professionalism when faced with an anomaly. She opened the car door and stepped out. The MPs immediately became more alert. Their hands hovered near their sidearms. "Please keep your hands where I can see them, ma'am," the male MP instructed. Evelyn complied. She stood patiently as they conducted a quick but thorough pat-down. It was impersonal, efficient. She felt a grudging respect for their adherence to protocol. "We need to take you to the Provost Marshal's office, Colonel," the female MP said, "for further questioning." "That will be fine," Evelyn replied. "Lead the way." They escorted her across the dusty parade ground, the morning sun already beating down relentlessly. The fort was a hive of activity. Soldiers in various stages of training ran drills. Vehicles rumbled past. The air was filled with the distant crackle of rifle fire. She observed everything. The state of the barracks, the discipline of the troops, the general atmosphere. It was all data, all part of her assessment. They arrived at a drab concrete building, the Provost Marshal's office. Inside it was cool and dimly lit. A sergeant sat behind a desk, his uniform rumpled, his face tired. "Sergeant, we have a situation," the male MP announced. "This Colonel Reed claims to be reassigned here, but has no official orders, and her ID is old." The sergeant looked up, his eyes widening slightly as he saw Evelyn. He quickly stood to attention. "Colonel, my apologies. Please have a seat." Evelyn took a seat in a hard plastic chair. The MPs stood by their faces, grim. "Colonel Reed, The sergeant began, his voice cautious. Can you provide any documentation for your transfer? Any contact information for your commanding officer? I am the commanding officer, Evelyn stated simply. The sergeant blinked. Then he laughed. It was a nervous, disbelieving laugh. Ma'am, with all due respect, that is not possible. General Peterson is the commanding officer of Fort Jericho. Not anymore, Evelyn said. As of 0600 this morning, I am. The sergeant stared at her, his mouth agape. The two MPs behind her shifted uneasily. They clearly thought she was either delusional or attempting some elaborate prank. Ma'am, I am going to have to ask you to cooperate, the sergeant said, his voice hardening. This is a serious matter. Impersonating a commanding officer is a federal offense. I am not impersonating anyone, Sergeant Evelyn replied, her voice still calm, but with an edge that was beginning to penetrate their disbelief. I am General Evelyn Reed, your new commanding officer, and I believe I have been detained long enough. The sergeant hesitated. There was something in her eyes, a quiet authority that transcended rank insignia or official documents. He had seen it before in high-ranking officers, a presence that commanded respect without needing to demand it. He reached for his phone. I am going to call General Peterson's office, ma'am, just to verify. Do that, Sergeant, Evelyn said, and tell him General Reed is waiting. The sergeant dialed the number, his hand trembling slightly. He spoke into the phone, his voice low and deferential. Evelyn watched him. She saw the moment of recognition, the sudden stiffening of his posture, the widening of his eyes. Yes, sir, General Reed. Here at the Provost Marshal's office. Yes, sir. I understand, sir. Immediate release, sir. My deepest apologies, sir. He hung up the phone, his face ashen. He slowly turned to face Evelyn, his eyes filled with a mixture of shock and terror. He snapped to attention a rigid salute. General Reed, he stammered. My profound apologies, General. We had no idea. The two MPs behind her stood frozen, their faces mirroring the sergeant's horror. They had just detained the new commanding officer. They had patted her down, questioned her, laughed at her. Evelyn slowly rose from the chair. She walked towards the sergeant, her gaze unwavering. At ease, Sergeant. He slowly lowered his salute, his eyes still wide. You followed protocol, Evelyn said. You did your duty. You were skeptical of an irregular arrival. That is what I expect from my military police. Professionalism, vigilance, even when faced with the unexpected. The sergeant gulped. Yes, General. However, Evelyn continued, her voice firm. There is a difference between vigilance and decisiveness, between following procedure and lacking judgment. When a senior officer states their rank and purpose, even without immediate verification, a certain level of respect is warranted. A phone call should have been the first step, not detention. Yes, General, the sergeant mumbled. And you, Evelyn, turned to the two MPs. You performed your duties at the gate adequately, but your dismissive tone and your laughter were unprofessional. Rank is earned, not assumed. But respect for rank is a cornerstone of military discipline. The male MP looked down at his boots. The female MP met her gaze, her face flushed with embarrassment. I understand, General, the female MP said, her voice quiet. We will learn from this. Good, Evelyn said. Now, Sergeant, please escort me to General Peterson's office. And I want those two MPs to join us. They will witness my official assumption of command. The sergeant moved quickly, his previous fatigue vanished. He led the way through the labyrinthine corridors of the headquarters building. The two MPs followed their steps, heavy, their faces still pale. They arrived at General Peterson's office. The door was already open. General Peterson, a stern-faced man with a distinguished military career, stood waiting. His aide, a young captain, looked nervous. General Reed, Peterson said, his voice devoid of emotion. He extended his hand. Welcome to Fort Jericho. I understand you had an interesting arrival. Evelyn shook his hand. Her grip was firm. Indeed, General, it was informative. She glanced at the two MPs standing rigidly behind her. These officers were simply doing their job. Peterson raised an eyebrow. He clearly knew the full story. Of course, Sergeant Miller, I trust you handled the situation appropriately. Yes, sir, the sergeant stammered. Good, Peterson said. He turned to Evelyn. My office is yours, General. The change of command ceremony is scheduled for 1000. I have prepared all the necessary briefings and handover documents. Thank you, General, Evelyn replied. I appreciate your thoroughness. She then turned to the two MP's officers. I want you to remember this day, not as a day of embarrassment, but as a lesson. Every soldier, no matter their rank, deserves respect. In every situation, no matter how unusual, deserves careful consideration. You are the face of this fort. Your actions reflect on all of us. The MP stood straighter. The female MP looked at Evelyn, her eyes no longer filled with embarrassment, but with a newfound respect. Yes, General, we understand. Dismissed, Evelyn said. The MPs saluted sharply, then turned and left the office, their steps lighter than before. The sergeant lingered for a moment. General Reed, he said, I truly am sorry. I hope this does not reflect poorly on my unit. It reflects on all of us, Sergeant, Evelyn said gently, but it also shows me where we can improve. Now go. I have work to do. The sergeant saluted again and quickly departed. General Peterson watched them go, then turned back to Evelyn. You certainly made an impression, General. Not many commanders would put themselves in that position. I believe in leading by example, General Evelyn said. And in understanding the ground truth, sometimes the best way to do that is to remove the layers of formality. The handover proceeded smoothly. Peterson was efficient, thorough. He clearly respected her, despite the unconventional arrival. Evelyn absorbed every detail. The fort's strengths, its weaknesses, its ongoing challenges. She asked incisive questions, demonstrating a deep understanding of military operations. At 1000, the change of command ceremony took place. The parade ground was filled with soldiers. The air was thick with anticipation. General Peterson gave a brief speech, acknowledging his time at Fort Jericho and wishing his successor well. Then it was Evelyn's turn. She stepped to the podium, her uniform crisp, her bearing commanding. The sun glinted off the stars on her shoulders. She looked out at the assembled troops. Her eyes swept over the faces. She saw the 2 MPs from the gate standing in formation, their faces solemn. She gave them a subtle nod. Soldiers of Fort Jericho, she began, her voice strong and clear, resonating across the parade ground. I am General Evelyn Reed, your new commanding officer. A ripple went through the crowd. Many had heard the rumors, but seeing her there standing tall and resolute was different. I believe in discipline, she continued. I believe in excellence, I believe in integrity, and I believe in every single one of you. This fort is a vital asset to our nation's defense, and we will ensure it operates at the highest possible standards. She spoke of her vision for Fort Jericho, of innovation, of training that pushed boundaries, of a culture that fostered respect and inclusivity. She did not shy away from the challenges. She acknowledged them directly, and she outlined her plan to address them. Her speech was not filled with flowery rhetoric. It was direct, practical, inspiring. By the time she finished, the initial skepticism had begun to dissipate. A new energy, a new sense of purpose seemed to settle over the fort. In the days and weeks that followed, Evelyn implemented her reforms with quiet determination. She held town hall meetings with soldiers of all ranks, listening to their concerns. She initiated new training programs focusing on adaptability and critical thinking. She emphasized mentorship and professional development. The 2 MPs who had detained her at the gate became some of her most diligent supporters. They had seen her true character. They had witnessed her leadership firsthand. They understood that she was not just a general, but a leader who valued every soldier. One afternoon, a few months later, Evelyn was walking across the parade ground. She saw the male MP from the gate standing guard. He snapped to attention as she approached. At ease, officer, she said with a smile. General Reed, he replied, his voice respectful. Good afternoon, General. How are things at the gate, she asked. Running smoothly, General, he said. We have improved our verification procedures, and we are more mindful of how we interact with everyone, no matter who they are or how they arrived. Evelyn nodded. That is good to hear. Remember what I said. Every interaction is an opportunity to demonstrate professionalism. Yes, General, he said. We will not forget. She continued her walk, a sense of quiet satisfaction settling over her. Fort Jericho was changing. Slowly but surely. It was becoming the fort she envisioned. A place of excellence, a place of respect, a place where every soldier felt valued. And it all began with a simple test at the gate, a test that she had deliberately failed to pass, a test that had revealed the true character of her new command, and the true strength of her own leadership.